Fallout Equestria the Chrysalis, Chapter 13, Revealed. As I'm sure that you've concluded, I didn't die there in the street, staring down the barrel of Dusty's rifle. If he had gunned me down, I obviously wouldn't really be able to record these events. While there were still all sorts of consequences that could have transpired, and indeed some of which did, you at least know that I lived. I, however, didn't have the advantage of such information with which to make such conclusions. I just had a very serious and very deadly pony keeping his rifle on me as he gave orders. "Stop right there," Dusty said, and I obediently came to a halt just a couple yards away from the service station window. He stayed within in relative safety, as did Starlight and Sickle. My pistol and rifle, as well as the bolt-action rifle I had taken, lay in the middle of the street where Dusty had me set them. Unarmed, in the open, held at gunpoint, and without a disguise. It was about the most vulnerable I had ever felt. "Speak," Dusty commanded, the muzzle of his rifle hardly twitching as he spoke. "Who are you?"
"Fuck that!"
Starlight said, shoving up to the window. Her eyes glanced towards my chest, where my magazine pouch and binoculars still hung, and a moment later I had the muzzle of her lancer right in my face.
"Where did you get that shit?"
I cringed back, eyes squinting as if it somehow would offer some form of protection.
"Starlight, wait, it's me!"
I said, only barely keeping myself from backpedaling.
"I'm Whisper."
Her expression contorted to one of supreme disbelief, and it was a full second before she blurted out a sharp,
"What?" "I'm a shapeshifter."
I'll be honest, I had been a little tempted to come up with some sort of other story, some way of preserving my actual identity. I mean, perhaps I could have convinced them that Whisper was still out there in the ruins, waiting to be found. Perhaps, but likely not, and even if I did, chances were that the secret would be coming out eventually anyway. Starlight just simply stared at me in silence, skepticism etched into her features. Dusty just watched me calmly past the sights of his rifle. Sickle, meanwhile, had her front legs splayed over the counter, leaning against it and grinning like this was the most entertaining thing she had ever seen. Or at least I think she was grinning. Between all the blood covering her face and the seemingly misshapen figure under that metal muzzle, it was really hard to tell for sure, though. After a moment of silence, I relaxed, despite the gleam of the Lancer's focusing crystal only inches away from my face. I gave a small shrug and a weak and very awkward smile.
"Like I said in Merford, I've got tricks you hadn't seen yet."
Dusty's eyes narrowed slightly, but it was Starlight who spoke.
"Brahmin shit. If you're a shapeshifter, then shapeshift." "Okay,"
I said, giving a cautious nod.
"I can do that, but could you maybe not have your weapons pointing at me when I do? It's very sudden and flashy, and I'd really rather not be shot at because I startled you."
Both she and Dusty looked unhappy with the idea, but after a moment, Dusty lowered the muzzle of his rifle to point at the ground between my hooves, and a moment later, Starlight did the same. It would take them only an instant to bring their weapons to bear, but at least I had more than a single unintentional twitch between me and death. "Okay, fine," Dusty said. "Now, get on with it." I nodded, then closed my eyes as I called up my magic. Adrenaline is an amazing thing. It kicks everything into overdrive from heart rate to metabolism, and can even heighten senses in a way. And it also dulls pain, and that's useful when you need to fight through an injury. It's not so useful when you really needed to know that you were hurt. I cried out as pain tore through me. I collapsed onto the ground, clutching a foreleg tight against my left side as if I could physically contain the terrible sensation that had erupted there. It felt as if a blade had just been driven in along the edge of my thoracic plate, or between the ribs it had turned into. My cry died away into a grunt as I grit my teeth, sucking in deep breaths and hissing out again as I held my side. A spot of dampness was slowly but steadily growing. "Okay," Dusty said, his voice sharp. "What the hell was that about?" I wheezed between clenched teeth.
"Think I've been shot at, or shrapnel. Something inside cut me up when I changed."
That was enough talking for me. I curled up a little bit more, holding my side. After several seconds, I felt stable enough to crack my eyes open. Both Dusty and Starlight had their weapons pointed at me. They had been exchanging quiet murmurs, but stopped the moment I looked at them. Sickle, meanwhile, had leaned further over the counter so she could still see me, though she looked as if she were about to tip over. I spoke up, trying not to whimper, and not entirely succeeding.
"I could really use some medical attention."
Starlight stared down at me with only the faintest hint of sympathy behind her glare.
So, you can look like her. That doesn't mean that you are her, just... I don't know. Tell me something only she would know.
If I had ever given serious thought to the previously ludicrous scenario of having to convince a pony that I really was the same individual I had been disguised as, after having revealed my true nature to that pony, perhaps I wouldn't have felt quite so lost as I did at that moment. Instead, I stammered, eyes wandering as I tried to think past the pain. After several seconds of weak panting, it hit me. I looked up to meet Starlight's eyes and my voice quiet.
Midnight.
Starlight's head drew back at that name, her eyes widening slightly. The muzzle of her lancer drooped, wavered, and finally lowered all the way.
Holy shit.
She murmured, slowly looking over me from head to hoof. Slowly and laboriously, I managed to disentangle myself from the stolen cloak and push myself up until I was sitting. As I took a break, panting softly, Dusty finally spoke up, his voice calm. Huh. I always knew you were full of shit. I didn't think that it went this far, though.
I'm sorry.
I said, wincing as I shifted my position to put less weight on my side.
I tried to be as honest as I could without...
Dusty's expression changed in an instant, eyes narrowing as he snapped. Well, you sure didn't try very hard. The pain made it hard to maintain a calm, neutral expression, but I somehow managed.
Well, it's not as if I'm the only one who keeps secrets, Sergeant.
He bristled, the muzzle of his rifle rising to point at me as he growled around his bit. That's not even close to the same thing. Fuck, I don't even know what the hell you are.
No, it's not the same thing,
I replied as my body tried to squeeze out its final dregs of adrenaline. I did my best to stay calm, though my legs trembled more from pain than from fear.
My secret was a matter of survival. You saw what I looked like.
I winced again at the stab of pain in my side, taking a few more breaths to calm down.
How long do you think I'd last if I wasn't disguised as a pony? My shape-shifting is the only advantage I have out here. The more ponies know about it, the weaker that advantage becomes. But I was willing to risk giving that up to save your lives.
Dusty was rigid and silent for several seconds. Then, he slowly relaxed, the muzzle of his rifle dropping again. After another second of staring, he finally spoke again. Starlight, get her fixed up. Just drag her ass in here first. I don't want you out in the open if a straggler shows up. And you, he said to me, are you gonna tell us everything? And I mean fucking everything. I nodded. Starlight opened the metal door onto the backside of the structure and walked up to me, looking entirely uncertain about the situation. After a few moments of indecisive wavering, she let up her horn. Her magic lifted up under me, helping me get to my hooves and giving me a little stability as I hobbled my way in. I didn't really think to mention before, but the small service station building bore impressive scars from the fighting. The concrete face of the building had been chewed up and cratered by the incoming fire, leaving small heaps of pulverized concrete around its base, but the building held strong. When I had stepped in through the door, I saw that the back wall had also bore quite a few craters from bullet impacts, forming a nearly perfect rectangle in the mirror of the window at the building's front. The amount of incoming fire must have been intense. I finally collapsed onto my side behind the counter, my cloak giving me a little protection against the small chunks of concrete scattered about the floor. Dusty glanced my way, but mostly kept his eyes outward, while Starlight pulled out her medical supplies. Sickle still leaned on the counter, but had twisted around to see me, leaving her lean at an awkward angle. With the way she slowly wavered, I half expected her to collapse at any moment. Well, Dusty said, casting a sharp glare my way before looking outward again. Get talking. I sighed. This was exactly the sort of thing I had wanted to avoid, but there was really no way of getting around it.
Have you ever heard of changelings?
Nope, Dusty said. The relief I had felt at the opportunity to plead my case free of any pre-existing bias clashed with the disappointment at not finding any potential lead on my own kind.
Well, that's what I am.
I said.
We're shapeshifters. We use our abilities so we can live safely among ponies, and...
I hesitated, glancing back to where Starlight was laying out her medical supplies. And? Dusty prompted with an impatient tone. I can't stress enough just how much I did not want to elaborate on the subject, but I didn't see that I had much choice. After all, if I didn't, and they ever learned even the most basic details of changelings at a later date, it would destroy any chance that they would even trust me. As much as I hated it, my only option was to tell them and hope that they were decent enough to not do anything drastic.
And I want you to appreciate that I could easily not mention what I'm about to tell you. It's absolutely not in my personal interest for you to know. It's something you wouldn't know if I didn't tell you, and if I were trying to deceive you, it's the sort of thing I wouldn't tell you. I'm putting a lot of trust in you by telling this, and I just want you to consider that.
Dusty cast another glance my way, rightfully suspicious. I winced a little as Starlight nudged my left leg from my side and pulled aside the cloak. She carefully dabbed a cloth around the deceptively tiny wound to wash away some of the blood. I took in another deep breath and forced myself to speak.
Changelings need magic, and we die without it. Unlike ponies, though, we don't produce it, so in order to live, we have to get magic from ponies.
Starlight's cleaning halted while Dusty's attention was fully focused on me. What? He asked.
And magic is closely tied to emotions, especially positive ones, like love. So changelings, we feed on that love to get the magic that we need to live.
That statement broke Sickle. While Dusty and Starlight stared at me, the armored mare cracked up.
Oh, wow.
She cried out past her laughter, and she finally lost her struggle for balance, collapsing to the side to sit propped up against the wall.
You eat love. Oh, you're so fucked.
I couldn't help scowl at her.
Yeah, kinda sucks at times, thanks.
Shut the fuck up, Dusty snapped to Sickle before turning to me, glaring. So, you mean to tell me that you've been feeding on us this entire time?
No,
I said, casting an awkward glance to my side.
Just Starlight. She's the only one who liked me enough to get anything from.
Using the past tense hurts, even if it was true at the moment.
Even then, I've been close to starvation this whole time.
Starlight sat still for just a second, then returned to cleaning the wounds with a little more firmness. Sickle was clutching her bloody side, still laughing.
Oh, fuck, that hurts. Oh, wait a second. So, Starlight loves you.
Her laughter grew louder.
I knew you two cunts were fucking. Oh, this is great.
I gritted my teeth as Starlight jabbed the cloth against me again.
Romantic love doesn't require physical intimacy, nor is it the only kind of love,
I said, even though I was fairly certain that Sickle wasn't actually listening.
Starlight and I are friends.
I hesitated, casting an uncertain look her way.
At least, I hope that we still are.
She didn't answer, or even meet my eyes. She focused entirely on her work. The cloth floated away, replaced with a forceps, and she stuck the tip of them into the wound, and I jerked, grunting out in pain.
Don't move,
she murmured.
That really hurts,
I grunted between clenched teeth. She didn't even answer. While I did my best to remain still as she probed around in my wounds, my best wasn't very good and my panting soon grew increasingly strained. As Starlight worked, she gave me the occasional mumble, though it seemed more to herself or Dusty than to me.
This isn't like a wound track,
she said, twisting the forceps and moving her head to get a better view while I squirmed.
It's more like ground meat in here.
I grunted and whimpered, tears clouding my eyes.
Can I please have a painkiller? This really hurts. It's gonna hurt a lot more if you keep squirming,
Starlight murmured.
This should be quick.
The forceps twisted and I cried out.
Starlight, I'm sorry. Okay, please.
The forceps froze as Starlight looked me in the face, her eyes suddenly wide. She looked at my pleading expression, then the tears rolling down my cheeks, and her jaw trembled. She wavered for a moment, then the forceps slipped away. I groaned in relief and she turned, digging through her medical supplies once more. She didn't bother with the pills, and a few seconds later, a needle floated over to my side. The pricking sensation was barely noticeable beside the pain of my wound, and within moments, I could feel that pain slowly but steadily sliding into the background. Starlight sat silently, staring down at my wound as if refusing to make eye contact with me. She murmured,
Let me know when it's working.
I laid my head down, slowly panting. The feeling of pain didn't exactly go away. I could still feel it there, it didn't really hurt.
Okay.
I said between breaths.
Thank you.
She went to work again, but this time the forceps twisting around inside me simply provoked feelings of unease instead of excruciating pain. The feeling of something just tugging inside of me, and the fleshy body distending around it, that was particularly disturbing. I whimpered quietly as the object was pulled out. Though I did close my eyes, I could picture Starlight's expression of skepticism just from her voice.
That isn't a bullet. Or shrapnel.